after my conversation with the amazing Chioma, Chigul, what stuck out at me, and I think that came through also in the conversation, was just how immensely talented she is and her ability to create all of these voices. Now, while she did say that some are already set in stone and she's working on some others, for me, the one that sticks out a lot is Miss Doreen. Miss Doreen is from the southern part of America. She's like a church lady, but she's also very sassy and has a lot of oomph. And when I looked through my cookbook collection, I decided that I was going to make a recipe out of Down Home with the Neelys. The Neelys were a couple from the South that featured on Food Network. They came upon that contract by chance and they went on to do amazing things. Now, they as a couple are no longer a thing, but this book has a lot of gems, and it's really a book that I think a lot of Nigerians and Africans will appreciate because the flavors are familiar to us and the ingredients are also easy to find. We're going to be making bare braised sausages and peppers, and we're going to be serving those with bread rolls. So it changed from our regular rice. Let's get to it. So to make the amazing bare braised sausages and sweet peppers, again, this is a very interesting recipe because I think food should not be gender specific, but for people who are a bit finicky, I think men would really like this because there's bear in it, there's sausages in it. It's a change from our regular repertoire, but still familiar if you like pepper soup and dipping things into broth. So the ingredients that you will need, easy to come by. We are going to need bear, of course. You need, doesn't have to be cold, but you need some bear. We need some oil. You can use a flavorless oil, so vegetable oil or canola oil. We're going to need sausages, of course. Use any sausages that you like. Cut them, not necessarily into small pieces, because remember, as you're cooking, it's going to shrink. So I would say maybe cut a sausage into 2 pieces. You're going to need onions, garlic, peppers, of course. These are bell peppers. We've got the green, the red, and orange. Mustard, a little bit of mustard. We also need some honey, some salt, fresh rosemary. We also have some dried. I'll talk a little bit about the differences between the two, and some vinegar. Nice and simple. All right, so now I take my lid off my pot, set that aside, and then we want to start by frying off the sausages. So I will get this going. So now, add some of your oil into your pan. Get ready to fry off your sausages. And you're not gonna fry them till they're ready, but you just want to sort of brown them off a little bit. And just enough to coat the pan. And you're not going to waste all of the goodness, because once you put the sausages in the oil and begin to fry, they will release some of their flavor. We're going to use that same oil to do everything else, right? So let me get my, what's it gonna be? This thing here. This thing is a spatula. It's a frying thingy, right? Look, guys, you know me by now. Sometimes I'll go blank. It's all part of it. I'm not going to pretend to be the perfect domestic goddess. So I'm just waiting for my oil to heat a little bit. Rule of thumb, right? Some people will put salt in the oil. Some people will drop water. I just put my hand a little bit over the pot. And then when it's warm, I can sort of tell. Maybe that's not even the safest thing to tell you, but that's what I do. So you just want to wait until your oil is hot before you add the sausages. All right, now I'm going to add the sausages in. Because you're making sort of like a soupy broth, you don't necessarily need to give them space, right? So you can just pour them all in the pan. And then spread them out as best as you can. And just wait. Again, we're not cooking it through because it's going to cook in its own juices, but we do want some of the sausage flavor to just get into the oil, and see if we can brown them up just a little bit. So while that's going on, I'm going to just get my extra container because we're going to transfer the sausages when they get to a particular point. I want to say about 5 minutes in, if your oil is very hot, and transfer them into a container. So I have that one on the ready. Let me move that out of the way. The key to less uzo things happening in the kitchen is to sort of clear out things out of your way. I cannot tell you the number of times when I'm trying to be all tush, makeup has been done, and then I just break stuff on set. So I would just say, for safety, whenever you're done with anything, just move it out of like hand's reach. less kitchen accidents that way. So I can see here our sausages are frying a little bit. I'm just going to give it a bit of time, like I said, about 5 minutes or so, just for the sausage juices to come impart into the oil, but also so that we begin to have a bit of color on the sausages as well. Now, according to this Lily's cookbook, this is a southern recipe. Of course, you tweak it a little bit, but it's very, very reminiscent of home-style gatherings. You know, you'd make big pots of this and people would be able to share, because southern traditions, there's a lot of family involved. You know, you always have people coming over. This is a relatively inexpensive way to feed a large number of people without having to buy like individual cuts of meat. You can use sausages that are pocket friendly and go from there. And then another reason why I selected this recipe as well is because for us Nigerians, we tend to feed a lot of people, but we also tend to go to our tried and tested recipes. Everything is rice and something usually. So while you can eat this with rice, I think it's a good idea. We love to eat bread as well. To have something a little bit different over the dinner table, you can have a big pot of this and have everybody have their own bowls, and then just have bread, fresh soft bread, and just tear the bread apart and dunk it in this flavorful juice. It's amazing. Now don't worry about the fact that you're using beer. Typically when you cook with alcohol, the alcohol content evaporates and you're left with just the flavor, and so you will just have like this really deep earthy flavor that comes from the beer without the booze. Okay, so you can see that our sausages are beginning to change color now. And I will just begin to remove them one at a time, or piece by piece rather. Okay. Now, whenever you're working with things like meat and you're frying it in oil and you're going to still use the oil after, please make sure that you always scrape the bottom of the pot, because that's where a lot of this goodness is. A lot of the flavor sticks to the bottom of the pot. Okay. A lot of people ask, everybody always asks me, and it's been a very long time since I haven't had this question, but whenever they see that I'm doing work in front of the camera, they're like, who eats the food? Who eats the food? Guys, who eats the food?
We.
So usually you cook and you make sure that your crew is well fed. That's what makes them want to work with you again. Otherwise, they'll just be like, that miserly person, we don't want to work with her. So the sausages are almost done. We have a couple more pieces to bring out, and then we get into the fun part. Now, another reason why I like this recipe, I have to be very realistic. We are all very busy. I don't know anybody who wants to spend forever in the kitchen anymore. This is a meal that comes together in less than 30 minutes if you have prepped all your ingredients, right? So, you know, don't think that you're going to have it in 30 minutes if you've not yet cut your onions or your peppers or anything like that. Another uzoism. Okay, so sausages are out. Now I'm just going to swap my utensils very quickly to a regular spoon, and then I'm going to scrape the oil and the contents of the pot to be sure that I don't miss anything. All of those, some chicken bits are in the at the bottom of the pot, so I just want to make sure I loosen that up. Now it's time to add my onions. Make sure that you cut it as fine as you want. I have a lot of people in my life who do not like to see onions. They will eat it in stews and sauces, but the moment they can see it, it's a problem. So make sure that you cut your onions as finely as possible. Stir, stir, stir. And then you just want to cook this till it's a little bit translucent, which means that your onions start to become transparent. So that may, depending on how high your flame is, it can be as little as, 5 minutes. I will do that, and then I will add the garlic. The reason why I don't usually like to add garlic first is because garlic burns very quickly. So if you add it first without all of your other ingredients, it will burn and then it will taste bitter. So start with your onions. That takes a longer amount of time, and then we can add the garlic. Okay, so now I'm going to add my garlic. Add as little or as much garlic as you want. I've got a little spoon thingy here. Please try not to double dip when you're cooking, because you don't want to transfer. If we don't finish all of this garlic, you don't want to waste it. If you're going to transfer it into a container and you've already used the onion spoon or something else, you will actually encourage the growth of mold. So I'm adding some minced garlic here. Garlic and ginger, we Nigerians tend to use quite a lot. It's a good way to also save money if you prep it well. So what I would suggest is, if you've got fresh garlic and fresh ginger, you get a good deal on it, process it, chop it, blend it, do whatever it is you want, stick it in the freezer. You can process your garlic and your ginger together. You could do ginger and chilies together. Put it in a Ziploc bag or ice cube trays with a little bit of vegetable oil, and then you can just pop out when you need, rather than going through the stress of processing it when you want to cook. Okay. Now at this point, I'm going to add the bell peppers. Now the bell peppers are cut into strips. I prefer this because you want to be able to see them rather than have them in cubes. So I add that, get rid of my bowl, give this a little bit of a stir. Now you have to move fast, because once you've added the bell peppers in, we have to make sure that we can brown everything very, very quickly. So according to our recipe here, we also need to add our mustard, our honey, and the fresh, our fresh rosemary. So now I'm adding the honey in, just regular honey, nothing fancy, just whatever it is that you can get your hands on. Honey is a very, very interesting ingredient. I recommend looking out for honey from valid sources. Unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of really dark, so-called natural honey that apparently they're adding things to. So try to look for brands that you can trust. I'm going to add a little bit of the mustard. Now, I know a lot of people don't like mustard, but what mustard actually does, if it's not like in a sandwich, is it cuts the richness. It cuts through when flavors can be very cloying. Add beer. It's good to balance this out by adding a little bit of mustard. And just regular yellow mustard is fine, but of course if you've got it like that, you could do Dijon and whole grain and all of this fancy stuff. What you just need is the mustard to break up all of the richness that will come from, you know, the sausages as well as the beer. Now I'm also going to add my herbs and a little bit of salt. Now, really, I find sometimes people complicate cooking. Once you have good quality ingredients, you really only need salt and pepper and maybe indigenous things if you're making soups. There's no need to add all the different herbs and spices in the world, just a little bit at a time. So I'm just going to add a little bit of salt. It's easier to add than to take away, so we'll start off with just a little bit. Bear in mind that most sausages can be salty, so don't over salt this at all. Give that a little bit of a stir. And now time for my rosemary. Now rosemary is one of those herbs that works better with proteins that are dense. You know, it goes well with things like goat meat and beef, and of course now we're doing sausages. And there are there's dried rosemary in here. There's also fresh. I'm going to use fresh. Dried herbs typically are more pungent than fresh because obviously the flavors are concentrated. I'm glad to see that you can get rosemary very commonly now, and it's not that expensive. So little tips here. Once you've removed your rosemary from the sprigs, because what you want are these leaves, please feel free, save your stalks. Like, put your stalks in the freezer. They're excellent to make, you can use them to make stocks. Right? So just have this, any little herbs that you have, just keep collecting them in like a Ziploc bag. One day when you're ready to make stock, you can just add these stems and trimmings to chicken bones or beef bones so that you can make a very, very rich, flavorful broth. Another thing you could also do for people like me that like to grow is, this is a nice fresh one. Dip your stem of your rosemary into some water, put it on your windowsill, change the water every couple of days. Rosemary takes a bit longer, but after about 2 or 3 weeks, you actually have roots. Some roots will actually form, and then you can take this stalk and plant it so that you can always have fresh rosemary at home. So I'm adding a little bit more to this. Okay, and get that out of the way. I'm also going to add a little bit of vinegar. White vinegar is safest because it's flavorless. It's sort of like using vegetable oil or canola oil, just a little bit. Again, this is just really to cut the acid and the richness, right? So that's what this is going to do. Now at this point, we need to add the beer, and then we're going to return the sausages to our pan. So in here, I'm sure everybody's like, why are you using this mason jar thing for your beer? Because we don't want to advertise people that didn't sponsor us. So we poured it into this mason jar. So I'm going to pour some of it. Now I've added the beer. Now I'm going to put the sausages back in. Don't forget all the juices that are in your plate, because that is flavor. That's Flavor Town. Quick, leave us comments and let me know who says that, because it's a pretty popular person who talks about Flavor Town. All right, so now I'm going to give it one last stir. It's a good idea to taste at this point so that you can adjust salt, you can adjust anything else. Now your peppers should have some heat. Forget the fact that they're using bell peppers. I find that the red peppers in Lagos now or in Nigeria now, even though they're supposed to be mild bell peppers, they're spicy. So I didn't add any extra pepper, but feel free to add if you like spicy things. So now I will taste a little bit, make sure that we are good to go with our salt, and then cover the pot. Let this simmer for 10 minutes, lower your heat, 10 minutes, and then it should be ready, and we will plate up and serve that with our bread rolls. Okay, so a little bit of broth just to taste it. Oh, that's nice. So the honey also adds a little bit of sweetness. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt, even though I don't eat a lot of salt. But also not too much, because as it reduces, the flavors will intensify. So just a little bit. There we go. I'll give it one last stir, and then I will cover the pot, and then we will simmer this. Oh, I love that. This is the bear action happening. So I will cover this and let this simmer for 10 minutes, and then after that we'll be ready to plate and taste. So, oh, perfection. This looks absolutely amazing. Smells amazing. It looks good. So we're ready to serve. So we're going to be serving this with bread rolls. Remember I mentioned that in when we first started. You can do this with rice. I'm sure you can even toss some pasta into this, but please, let's just try and do not rice today. I'm gonna grab my scoopy spoon here and give this a stir. It's ready for serving. Now, obviously, Chioma Chigul works a lot on movie sets and TV sets and things, and I know we had such an amazing time talking about the kind of food on sets. However, there are so many tips and tricks when you're dealing with food for the camera, right? And obviously, I should know a little bit about that, because I don't act, but I do make food stars when it comes to photo shoots and videos. So I want to share a couple of tricks of the trade. So sometimes when you see ice cream in videos or in pictures, it actually isn't even ice cream, because obviously ice cream is very, very difficult to work with because it melts. So what usually happens is we make mashed potatoes or mashed yam and then use an ice cream scoop and then put that over it, and then you can use all sorts of weird things as your toppings, but the core of it is mashed potatoes. When you want to do vegetables and have them look nice and plump and just, make you want to go to the farmer's market or go to the grocery store to buy those particular vegetables, what we've done is in a little spray bottle, we will put some water and glycerine. And then when you spray it, it just gives you that nice beady condensation look that isn't even water. And I did that again when I did a shoot for a particular company that makes beers. And so we shot for hours and hours and hours. and those bottles were glistening. They were not cold, but they looked nice and chilled. And the trick of it was using water and glycerin in a spray bottle. So just free here, right? This is the kind of stuff that we pay consulting money for, right? That's a good way for you to take pictures, especially if you're like, just content creating and things like that. So now I'm ready to scoop. I'm ready to scoop because I have some hungry people looking at me. So all of this talking has to come to an end. Make sure you get a generous portion. You've got the sausages. You've got your bell peppers. And of course, you've got the liquid, because that is what you're going to be dunking your bread in. Fun fact, my mother is a dunker. It's one of the weirdest things. She likes to make tea and dunk biscuits in it. It freaks me out because I'm like, the biscuits are going to get soggy. But it's a content and comfort thing for her. And I know a lot of other people do it. Are you team dunking into stuff? I'm definitely not. Now, I want to make it look fresh and just add a little bit more flavor to this. So I'm going to add a little bit of parsley. You can chop up your parsley, or you can use your fingers to, tear it into pieces. Of course, if we were not on camera, I would use my hands, but you have to make sure that you are not contaminating food. And so just sprinkle a little bit of parsley on the top with some fresh bread rolls. Here are our bare braised sausages with peppers, perfect for a cozy evening in. Please feel free to watch a movie with this. This is, definitely more interesting than popcorn. You can't take this to the movie theater, but when you're in your home, if you have friends over, serve bowls of this. Make a big batch like I've done and put it in a massive thing and let people serve themselves. Have a little bit of rice by the side, have bread rolls, have noodles. People can toss this in and everybody will leave feeling full. And there you have it, guys. These are bare braised sausages with peppers, inspired by my conversation with Chioma Omeruah, also known as Chigul, and her Miss Doreen character, who a lot of us have met on social media, on Instagram. Something that is fun, it's filling. I hope you enjoy it as much as I like to. And think of Chioma, think about movies, and think about Miss Doreen when you make it.